The stars burned cold in the emptiness of space. Among them, a broken ship drifted like a dying ember. Its hull was cracked, leaking atmosphere into the void. Inside, the last survivors of an ancient race huddled together, their crystalline bodies dimming with each passing hour. Elder Shivora stood at the center of the refugee chamber. Her body, once brilliant with inner light, now flickered weakly. Around her, 300 Valeth whispered in colors and vibrations that humans could never hear. They spoke of fear. They spoke of the end. The Valeth had been part of the Galactic Concordat for 2,000 years. They had shared their knowledge freely, helped build the great stations that connected the galaxy, and offered friendship to all who asked. But when the Catharn Dominion came with their warships and their hunger for conquest, everything changed. The Catharn wanted the Valeth worlds, rich in rare crystals and positioned along crucial trade routes. Those worlds represented power. The Catharn took them one by one, crushing any resistance. They destroyed cities that had stood for millennia. They shattered the great light gardens where Valeth children learned to sing in colors. Shivora had pleaded before the Galactic Council. She had shown them images of the destruction, had shared the cries of her dying people. The council members had looked away. Some had seemed uncomfortable. Most had seemed bored. "We cannot intervene," the council leader had said. "The Catharn control resources we need. A war would damage trade. Your people must find their own solution." Translation: "You are not worth the cost." So the Valeth ran, ships full of refugees scattered across the galaxy seeking shelter. But every world they approached turned them away. The Concordat had made its position clear, and no one wanted to anger the Catharn by harboring their prey. This colony ship carried the last survivors from the Northern Territories. They had been traveling for 3 months, their supplies nearly gone. The ship's engines had failed 2 weeks ago. Now they drifted in neutral space, sending out distress signals that no one answered. Shivora felt her light fading. Soon she would go dark. Soon all of them would. Perhaps it was better this way. At least they would die free, not in Catharn slave camps. A young Valeth named Kriva approached her, pulsing with desperate hope. "Elder, a ship approaches. It's responding to our beacon." Shivora's light dimmed further. "Catharn? No, Elder. The signature is strange. I've never seen this configuration before." In the vast dark, a shape emerged from faster-than-light travel. The ship was smaller than a Catharn dreadnought, but moved with purpose. Its hull bore markings in a language Shivora didn't recognize. Below the symbols, painted in bold white letters, was a name: Defiant Dawn. Inside the human ship, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, studying the Valeth vessel on her screens. She was a woman of 45 years, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that had seen too much suffering. Around her, her crew worked their stations with practiced efficiency.
"Life signs?"
she asked. "Faint but present," her science officer reported. "Approximately 300 individuals. Their biology reads as crystalline-based carbon-silicon hybrid. I've never seen anything like it, Captain. Hull integrity. Critical. They've got maybe 6 hours of atmosphere left, possibly less." Vasquez made her decision in seconds. "Prepare docking procedures. Medical teams to Bay 3, and someone find out who these people are and why they're dying out here." Her first officer, Commander Okoye, stepped closer. "Captain, we're scheduled to rendezvous with the supply convoy in 4 hours. If we deviate, then we deviate," Vasquez said. "Since when do humans ignore distress calls?" Okoye nodded, a slight smile crossing his face. "Since never, Captain. I'll inform the convoy." As the Defiant Dawn maneuvered alongside the dying Valeth ship, the communications officer raised her hand. "Captain, I'm receiving a message from the Concordat Central Command. They're ordering us to maintain course and ignore the distress beacon. They say the refugees are politically complicated." Vasquez felt something cold settle in her chest. "They want us to leave them to die?" "The order is quite explicit, ma'am." For a long moment, the bridge was silent. Every eye turned to the captain. Vasquez thought about her orders, about her career, about the chain of command she'd followed for 23 years. Then she thought about the 300 people dying in that ship, people who had done nothing wrong except lose a war. "Log my response," she said quietly. "Message reads Defiant Dawn responding to distress call as per United Earth Coalition emergency protocols. We don't leave people to die in space. Vasquez out." She turned to her crew. "Dock us now." The docking procedure took 15 precious minutes. When the airlocks finally connected, Vasquez herself led the boarding team. She had to see these refugees with her own eyes. The Valeth ship was cold and dark. Emergency lighting cast long shadows. As Vasquez's team moved through the corridors, they found the refugees huddled in what appeared to be a central chamber. Vasquez had seen many alien species in her career, but the Veilith took her breath away. They were roughly humanoid in shape, but made entirely of crystal that refracted light into rainbows. Each one glowed from within, though dimly now, like dying stars. The elder approached slowly. Shavora looked at this human woman in her military uniform and felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Through translators, Shavora's voice emerged, musical and ancient. "You," answered our call. "Why?" The Concordate said no one would come. Vasquez met the elder's eyes and spoke words that would echo across the galaxy. "We heard your call." "Humanity answers, always." She extended her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Shavora reached out. Crystal touched flesh and a connection was made that would change everything. The Concordate Central Station hung in space like a massive wheel, kilometers across. Ships from 47 different species docked at its spokes. In its council chamber, decisions were made that affected trillions of lives across hundreds of worlds. Ambassador Liu Chen walked those gleaming corridors with steady steps, though his heart pounded. He was 58, gray-haired and dignified, but right now he felt like a young man about to pick a fight he couldn't win. Behind him, Elder Shavora moved silently, her crystalline form drawing stares from every passing alien. 2 weeks had passed since the Defiant Dawn rescued the Veilith refugees. Those 2 weeks had been a storm of activity. Earth's government had debated, argued, and finally made a decision that many called foolish. Now Liu was here to announce that decision to the galaxy. The council chamber was a vast circular room. Representatives from all 47 species sat in tiered seats rising up like an amphitheater. At the center stood a speaking platform where Liu now waited. Above him, holographic displays showed his face to every corner of the galaxy. The council leader, a tall insectoid being called Zixthar, clicked his mandibles impatiently. "Ambassador Liu, you requested this emergency session. The council is listening." Liu took a breath and began. 2 weeks ago, a human ship encountered Veilith refugees in neutral space. They were dying. We saved them. "Without authorization," Zixthar interrupted. "You violated Concordate neutrality protocols." "We saved dying people," Liu repeated firmly. 300 lives that would have ended in the cold dark. And in doing so, we learned something troubling. He gestured, and holographic images appeared above the platform. Destroyed cities, burning worlds, bodies crystallized and shattered. The Catharn Dominion has killed 12 billion Veilith in the past 18 months. 12 billion, and this council, this galactic concordate that claims to represent civilization itself, has done nothing. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some representatives looked uncomfortable. Others looked angry. A delegate from the Sorval Unity stood. "The Catharn situation is complex. They control 70% of the trilithium mines in the eastern sectors. Our economies depend on those resources. Intervention would be costly. So you let an entire species die for economics?" Liu's voice was sharp. "Is that what the Concordate has become?" The Catharn ambassador rose from his seat. He was massive, scaled like a reptile but walking upright, with 4 arms and eyes that burned with cold intelligence. "The Veilith worlds belonged to the Catharn in ancient times. We merely reclaimed what was ours. Their resistance forced us to use harsh measures." His gaze fixed on Liu. "And humanity should be careful about involving itself in matters beyond its understanding. You are a young species, new to the Concordate. You don't know how things work. Then let me learn," Liu said. He turned to address the entire council. "I've spent the past 2 weeks researching Concordate history. Do you know what I found? 150 years ago, Earth faced extinction. An asteroid swarm, knocked loose by a rogue planet, was heading straight for our homeworld. We had the technology to detect it, but not to stop it. 6 billion people were going to die." The chamber quieted. Few species paid attention to human history. They were listening now. "We sent out desperate pleas for help," Liu continued. "Every species we could contact. 43 of you ignored us. 2 sent messages of sympathy but no aid. 1 species offered to buy Earth's art treasures before we died, to preserve them." His voice hardened. "And 1 species came. The Veilith." Shavora's light brightened slightly at the memory. "They shared their gravitational manipulation technology," Liu said. "Technology they'd developed over thousands of years. They taught us how to build the gravity tethers that pulled those asteroids into safe orbits. 6 billion humans are alive today because the Veilith helped us when no one else would." He let that sink in, watching faces throughout the chamber. So when people ask why humanity is involving itself, why we're risking our position in the Concordat for a lost cause, the answer is simple. We don't forget our friends. The Catharn ambassador's scales rippled with anger. Your sentimentality is noted. But sentiment doesn't win wars. If humanity harbors Velith refugees, you make yourselves our enemy. Are you prepared for that consequence? Lim met his gaze steadily. I am authorized by the United Earth Coalition to make the following announcement. As of today, humanity formally offers sanctuary to all Velith refugees. Any who can reach Earth or our colony worlds will be welcomed and protected. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Catharn ambassador's eyes widened. Furthermore, Liu continued, his voice rising, we pledge military support to defend the remaining Velith colony worlds in the Corvan Nebula. We will not stand by while genocide continues. You're declaring war on the Catharn Dominion? Zixthar stood, his insectoid body trembling. Are you insane? Your fleet has 34 combat-capable ships. The Catharn command 200 dreadnoughts and 4 times that many support vessels. You'll be destroyed. Possibly, Liu admitted. But we'll do it standing up for what's right. Can the rest of you say the same? The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Some called Liu a fool. Others looked thoughtful, even ashamed. The Catharn ambassador was speaking urgently into a communicator, no doubt reporting to his superiors. Liu stood calm in the center of the storm. Beside him, Shavora pulsed with colors that the translator interpreted as words. You didn't have to do this. Your people will suffer. Maybe, Liu said quietly. But my grandmother used to say that you can judge a person by who they stand beside in the dark times. I think the same is true for species. He smiled at her. Besides, you saved us once. Time to return the favor. Over the following hours, the council devolved into chaos. The Catharn formally declared humanity a hostile power. 3 species announced they were cutting diplomatic ties with Earth, afraid of Catharn retaliation. But something else happened too. Something unexpected. A delegate from the Threnody Collective, amphibious beings known for their engineering skills, approached Liu quietly as the session ended. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen, the Threnody said. Probably both. He hesitated. We cannot publicly support you, but if certain repair drones and spare parts were to go missing from our supply depots near human space, well, we have trouble with theft sometimes. Liu understood. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just try not to get completely destroyed out there. Some of us are watching, and some of us remember when we needed help too. As Liu and Shavora left the station, heading back to the transport that would take them to Earth, Liu wondered if humanity had just made the greatest mistake in its history. Or the finest hour, only time would tell. But across the galaxy on 1,000 worlds, people had watched the human ambassador stand before the council and choose honor over safety. That image would not be forgotten. The Corvan Nebula burned with colors no human eye had ever seen. Purple and gold gases swirled in massive storms, lit from within by young stars. It was beautiful. It was also about to become a battlefield. Captain Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, watching the nebula fill her view screen. Around her ship, 33 other human vessels held formation. Destroyers, frigates, and 2 heavy cruisers. Every combat-capable ship Earth could spare. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Enemy contact, her tactical officer announced. Multiple signatures emerging from the nebula's core. I count 187 Catharn warships. More appearing every second. Vasquez felt her stomach tighten. 200 ships against 34. But she kept her voice steady. Red alert. All ships to battle stations. Inform Admiral Zhang we have visual confirmation. In the fleet's flagship, Admiral Zhang reviewed the tactical display with cold eyes. He was 70 years old, had fought in the Mars Independence War, and had never lost a battle. Today might be the first time. They outnumber us 6-1, his second-in-command said quietly. I can count, Zhang replied. But numbers aren't everything. This nebula is full of magnetic storms and plasma clouds. Visibility is terrible. Sensors are scrambled. In conditions like this, it's not about who has more ships. It's about who fights smarter. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Zhang, I won't lie to you. We're facing impossible odds. The galaxy is watching, waiting for us to fail, waiting to say humanity was foolish for standing up to the Catharn. He paused. So let's show them what foolish humans can do. Make every shot count. Fight smart, fight dirty, and fight hard. Zhang out. On the Defiant Dawn, Vasquez turned to her crew. She saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. In the engineering section, a young ensign was clutching a photo of his family. In medical, doctors prepared for casualties they all knew were coming. But there were others aboard too. 20 Valith refugees, including Elder Shivora, had volunteered for the battle. They stood in the ship's computer core, their crystalline hands interfaced directly with the systems. "Captain," Shivora's translated voice came through the comm. "We are ready. The Valith can process data faster than your computers. We can see patterns, predict enemy movements. Let us help you fight." "Welcome to the crew, Elder," Vasquez said. "Give us everything you've got." The Catharn fleet advanced like a wall of steel. Their commander, Warlord Krayath, watched the human ships with amusement. 34 vessels against my armada. Did they come here to die or to surrender? "They're moving into defensive formation around the colony worlds," his tactical officer reported. "Irrelevant. Destroy them. Show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Catharn dominion." The first wave of Catharn ships opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space, bright enough to burn after images into human retinas. The human fleet scattered, diving into the nebula's clouds. "They're running." Krath laughed. "Chase them down." But the humans weren't running. They were adapting. In the purple clouds of the nebula, visibility dropped to nearly zero. Catharn sensors, designed for clear space combat, struggled to track their prey, but the Valith's crystalline forms could detect vibrations in the charged gas clouds. They whispered to the human crews, telling them where every enemy ship moved. "Target to port 3,000 kilometers," Shivora's voice guided. 2 dreadnoughts moving in formation. Vasquez nodded to her weapons officer. "Fire." Missiles streaked through the purple fog. The Catharn never saw them coming until they slammed into hull plating, tearing through shields weakened by the nebula's magnetic interference. Across the battlefield, the pattern repeated. Human ships would appear from the clouds, strike hard, and vanish again before the Catharn could respond. It was guerrilla warfare on a cosmic scale. "They're using the nebula against us," the Catharn tactical officer reported. "Our sensors can't lock on. We've lost contact with 8 ships," Krath snarled. "Then flush them out. Fire plasma torpedoes into the clouds. Burn away their hiding places." The Catharn launched hundreds of torpedoes into the nebula. Massive explosions lit up the gas clouds. Several human ships were caught in the blasts, their shields failing, hulls cracking. The destroyer Terra's Hammer broke apart, its crew of 300 lost in an instant. "Terra's Hammer is gone," the communications officer reported, her voice shaking. Vasquez closed her eyes for 1 second, mourning. Then she opened them again. "Mark their position. We'll remember them. Now find me another target." Admiral Zhang saw the battle developing and made a decision that would be studied in military academies for centuries. "All ships form up on my position. We're going to make them pay for clustering their fleet." The human vessels emerged from the nebula clouds, racing toward a specific coordinate. The Catharn saw them coming and began to converge, ready to crush the smaller fleet in a single decisive battle. "Now," Zhang commanded. The human ships had been quietly deploying thousands of autonomous drones throughout the battle, disguised among the nebula debris. Now those drones activated, forming a massive electromagnetic web between the approaching fleets. "What is that?" Krath demanded. His answer came in fire. The Valith technology that had once saved Earth from asteroids could manipulate gravity. Modified and weaponized, it could create a gravity well, a funnel in space itself. Combined with the drone's electromagnetic field, it created a corridor that pulled the Catharn ships helplessly forward. Right into the heart of a plasma storm. The storm had been building in the nebula for weeks, a natural phenomenon of incredible power. Now the gravity well directed 40 Catharn ships straight into its center. The plasma burned at temperatures hot enough to melt steel in seconds. Shields overloaded, hulls vaporized, 40 dreadnoughts died screaming. Krath stared at his tactical display in disbelief. He had just lost nearly a quarter of his fleet to one insane human trick. "Pull back," he ordered. "Reform outside the nebula. We regroup and reassess." But the humans weren't done. As the Catharn fleet retreated in disorder, human ships harried them every step of the way. Small, fast frigates darted in and out, firing missiles at engines and weapon systems. The Defiant Dawn led a squadron that destroyed 5 more enemy vessels before they could escape. When the first day of battle ended, both fleets withdrew to lick their wounds. The Catharn had lost 52 ships and thousands of soldiers. The humans had lost 12 vessels, including 2 cruisers. 4,000 humans were dead, but the Valith colony world still stood. In the Defiant Dawn's medical bay, Doctors worked frantically to save the wounded. In the mess hall, exhausted crew members ate in silence, too tired even to talk. On the bridge, Vasquez stared at the casualty reports, feeling the weight of every name. Elder Shivora approached her quietly. "You've sacrificed so much for my people. How can we ever repay this debt?" Vasquez looked at the ancient alien. "You already did. You saved our world once. Now we save yours. That's what friends do." She managed a tired smile. "Besides, we're not done yet. They'll be back, and next time they'll be ready for our tricks." "Then we'll need new tricks," Shivora said, her light pulsing with determination. "Exactly." Vasquez stood, rolling her shoulders. "Let's get to work." News of the battle spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, people watched the recordings in disbelief. The humans had fought the Catharn Dominion and survived. More than survived, they had won the first engagement. In the underwater cities of Threnod Prime, the amphibious engineers gathered in their council chambers. The images played on massive screens, human ships dancing through the nebula, using tactics no one had expected, fighting with a courage that seemed insane. "They're actually doing it," Speaker Velmora said quietly. "Those crazy humans are actually standing their ground." "And dying for it," another council member added. 4,000 casualties in one day. How long can they sustain losses like that? Velmora's gills fluttered thoughtfully. "That's not the question. The question is, can we continue to do nothing while they fight alone?" She paused. "Remember 30 years ago? The Plague of Shadows? The Catharn had the cure and refused to share it unless we gave them mining rights on our moon. 5 million Threnodi died before we surrendered to their demands." The chamber grew silent. Every Threnodi remembered that shame. "I propose we send more than repair drones this time," Velmora said. "I propose we send engineers, weapons, medical supplies. Everything we can spare. Secretly, of course. But we send it." The vote was unanimous. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. On the hive worlds of Quella, in the frozen cities of Corvin, in the desert communes of Saresh. Species that had suffered under Catharn intimidation watched humanity fight and felt something they hadn't felt in years. Hope. The Galactic Concordate's emergency session was chaos. Delegates shouted at each other in a dozen languages. Some demanded humanity be sanctioned for starting a war. Others argued that the Catharn's genocide justified intervention. Ambassador Liu stood at the center of it all, exhausted but unbowed. He had been fighting political battles for weeks while his people fought real ones in space. The Catharn ambassador slammed his 4 fists on his podium. The Concordate must condemn humanity's aggression. They have violated neutrality agreements. They have attacked Catharn vessels without provocation. They must be punished. Attacked without provocation? Liu's laugh was bitter. "You were exterminating an entire species. We stopped you from committing genocide. If that's aggression, then I'm proud to be aggressive." Before the Catharn could respond, something unexpected happened. The delegate from Quella stood, her insectoid mandibles clicking rapidly. "I wish to speak." The chamber quieted. The Quellan hives rarely spoke in council sessions. They were known for staying neutral, for avoiding conflict. "For 17 years, the Quellan delegate said, the Catharn have demanded tribute from my people. Food, resources, technology. Always with the threat of war if we refused. We paid every time because we had no choice, no allies, no one to stand with us." Her compound eyes swept the chamber. "Now I watch humans die defending a species that isn't even their own. And I ask myself, what does it say about us that we let them fight alone?" Another voice joined in from the Threnodi section. "The humans saved my people from asteroids once, just as they saved the Valith. We owe them a debt. But more than that, they're showing us what civilization should mean, not trade agreements and resource sharing. Those are economics. Civilization means standing up for each other when it matters." "Fine words," the Catharn ambassador sneered. "But words don't win wars. We have already deployed our reserve fleets. In 72 hours we will crush the human forces once and for all. And then we will remind the galaxy what happens to those who defy us." Liu felt ice in his veins. "What do you mean, reserve fleets?" The Catharn's smile was cruel. "Did you think the 200 ships were all we had? Foolish humans. We have been preparing a special weapon for the Valith's final world, Lumsara. In 3 days we deploy it. The planet will be destroyed along with the 3 million Valith still living there, and your fleet will be unable to stop it." The chamber erupted again. Liu's hands shook as he activated his emergency communicator. He had to warn Admiral Zhang. In the Corvan Nebula, the human fleet was barely holding together. The past 2 weeks had been a nightmare of constant skirmishes. The Catharn would probe their defenses, testing for weaknesses. The humans would fight them off. But each battle cost them ships they couldn't replace and crew they couldn't afford to lose. Only 22 human vessels remained combat-ready. Ammunition was running low. Medical supplies were nearly exhausted. The crews were surviving on 4 hours of sleep a day. But they hadn't lost a single Valith world. When Liu's message arrived, Admiral Zhang read it 3 times, hoping he had misunderstood. A planet-killer weapon, 72 hours. He called an emergency meeting of all ship captains. The holographic conference room aboard the flagship filled with tired faces. These men and women had aged years in the past weeks. Some showed bandages from injuries. All showed the weight of command under impossible circumstances. "They're bringing a planet-killer to Lumsara," Zhang said without preamble. "In 3 days, 3 million Valith will die unless we stop it." Captain Vasquez leaned forward in her hologram. "What kind of weapon?" "Intelligence suggests it's a gravity implosion device. It collapses a planet's core, destroying it from the inside. Once activated, it's unstoppable. But it has to be deployed from a command station in orbit around the target world." "So we destroy the station before they can deploy it," another captain said. "The station is protected by 80 fresh Catharn warships," Zhang replied. "And our fleet is down to 22 operational vessels. We're outnumbered 4-1, our people are exhausted, and we're nearly out of ammunition." Silence filled the conference room. Everyone understood what Zhang wasn't saying. This was a suicide mission. "Earth is sending reinforcements," Zhang continued. "But they won't arrive for another 3 weeks. We're on our own." "Then we go anyway," Vasquez said quietly. "What choice do we have? We came here to save the Valith. If we retreat now, we condemn 3 million people to death. Everything we've fought for, everyone we've lost, it all means nothing if we quit now." "Elena's right," another captain agreed. "We knew it was a one-way trip when we volunteered. At least let's make it count." One by one, the other captains nodded. Zhang felt pride swell in his chest. These were his people. Stubborn, foolish, brave humanity at its finest. "Then we have 72 hours to plan the impossible," he said. "Let's get to work." Aboard the Defiant Dawn, Elder Shivora found Captain Vasquez in her quarters, staring at photos of the crew they had lost. The Valith Elder's light pulsed with sadness. "You're planning to attack that station, aren't you?" Shivora asked. "We are. You'll die. All of you. My people aren't worth this sacrifice." Vasquez turned to face her. "That's not your decision to make, Elder, it's ours. And we've made it." She picked up one of the photos showing a young ensign who had died in the first battle. This kid was 22 years old. "He died defending your people. You think I'm going to let his sacrifice be for nothing? You think any of us will? Why?" Shivora's voice was anguished. "Why would your species do this? We're nothing to you. We're just aliens you barely know." "You saved our world," Vasquez said simply. "You gave us the technology to survive when everyone else turned away. Maybe that's enough. Or maybe," she paused, searching for words. "Maybe humans are just too stupid to know when to quit. Maybe we don't know how to walk away from people who need help. Whatever the reason, we're seeing this through." Through the viewport, the nebula swirled with color. Somewhere in that vast cloud, the Catharn were preparing their final blow. And somewhere in the dark, 22 human ships were preparing to do the impossible. The clock was ticking. The attack began at dawn, though in space there was no such thing. Admiral Zhang simply chose the moment when the Catharn would least expect it, during their shift change, when crews were tired and attention wandered. 22 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into Catharn formation. Every weapon fired at once. The first 3 Catharn vessels exploded before they knew they were under attack. "All ships, execute pattern Omega," Zhang commanded. "Make every shot count." The human fleet split into 3 groups, each diving in different directions. The Catharn scrambled to respond, their formation breaking apart as they tried to track multiple threats at once. But even surprise couldn't overcome the numbers. 80 Catharn warships began to swarm the human vessels. Energy beams lanced through space. Missiles filled the void like deadly stars. The destroyer Beijing's Pride took 3 direct hits. Its shields collapsed. Atmosphere vented from a dozen hull breaches. But even as it died, its crew kept firing, destroying 2 more Catharn ships before the Beijing exploded in a ball of fire. "Beijing is gone," the communications officer reported, voice cracking. "Mark it," Zhang said. "Keep fighting." Then something happened that no one expected. New contacts appeared on the sensors, ships dropping out of faster-than-light, emerging from the nebula clouds. 15 vessels with unfamiliar signatures. Identify those ships, Zhang demanded. Sir, I'm reading Threnody designs. And Quellen. And Corvani. They're not concorded official vessels. They look like volunteers, private ships. One of the new arrivals opened a channel. The voice was translated from amphibious sounds. Human fleet. This is Captain Velketh of the Threnody ship Rolling Tide. My crew and I got tired of sitting at home while you did all the fighting. Hope you don't mind some company. Zhang felt something hot behind his eyes. Backup allies, they weren't alone anymore. Welcome to the party, Captain, he managed. Target the ships protecting that station. We need a path through. Understood. All ships follow the humans. Let's show the Catharn what happens when they push people too far. The battle intensified. The allied ships, humans, Threnody, Quellen, and Corvani, fought with desperate courage against overwhelming odds. Ships burned and died on both sides. But slowly, meter by meter, they fought their way toward the Catharn command station. Aboard the Defiant Dawn, Captain Vasquez led her ship through a storm of fire. Her shields were failing. Hull plating was melted in a dozen places. But the station was in sight now, a massive structure orbiting the Valith world of Lumsara. Elder Shavora, Vasquez called to the computer core. Can you detect the weapon? Yes, Captain. It's in the station's central chamber. But the shielding is too strong. We'd need to get inside to destroy it. Then that's what we'll do. Prepare boarding teams. Captain, her first officer protested. That's a suicide mission. I know. I'm leading it. Vasquez stood, straightening her uniform. You have the bridge, Commander. If we don't make it back, ram this ship into that station. Don't let them deploy that weapon. The Defiant Dawn's armored boarding pod launched like a bullet, carrying 20 human marines and 5 Valith volunteers. It crashed through the station's hull, tearing open a wound in the metal skin. Vasquez led her team through dark corridors. Catharn soldiers rushed to meet them. The fighting was brutal. Close quarters combat with no mercy on either side. Vasquez's marines used their smaller size to advantage, ducking under the Catharn's forearms, firing at weak points in their armor. The Valith proved deadly in ways the Catharn never expected. Their crystalline bodies could refract energy weapons, turning enemy fire back on its source. Elder Shavora moved through the corridors like living light, her very presence disorienting to the Catharn soldiers. They reached the central chamber. The planet-killer weapon dominated the space, a massive sphere of dark metal covered in energy conduits. Catharn technicians fled at their approach. How do we destroy it? Vasquez asked, gasping for breath. Half her team was dead or wounded. Shavora approached the weapon, her crystalline hands touching its surface. This device works by creating a gravitational cascade. If I can absorb its energy matrix into my body, I can neutralize it, but what? The energy would destroy me. My molecular structure can't contain that much power. I would essentially become a bomb. No, Vasquez said firmly. We'll find another way. There is no other way, Captain, and we're out of time. Alarms blared throughout the station. The Catharn were preparing to activate the weapon remotely. In minutes it would fire, and 3 million Valith would die. Your species has given everything for mine, Shavora said gently. 4,000 humans dead, 22 ships destroyed. Your careers, your futures, all sacrificed for people you barely knew. Allow me to give something in return. Elder, please, tell my people I died proud. Tell them humanity showed us what true civilization looks like. Shavora's light burned brighter. Now go, Captain, run. Vasquez wanted to argue. Wanted to find another solution. But she knew there wasn't time. She saluted the ancient alien who had become her friend. It's been an honor, Elder. The honor was mine. Now run. Vasquez and her surviving marines sprinted for the boarding pod. Behind them, Shavora placed her hands fully on the weapon. Her crystalline body began to glow, brighter and brighter as she absorbed the massive energies of the planet killer into herself. The boarding pod launched just as Shavora reached critical mass. Her body couldn't contain the energy anymore. She became a star burning with impossible brilliance. The Catharn station exploded, torn apart by the gravitational forces she had absorbed and released. Aboard the Defiant Dawn, Vasquez watched the explosion through tears. They had won. The weapon was destroyed. Lumsara was safe. But the cost? Captain, the Catharn fleet is retreating, her tactical officer reported. They're surrendering. It's over. Across the galaxy, people watched the final battle. They saw the sacrifice. They saw humans and Valith and others die together, defending the helpless. And something changed in the hearts of millions. The Concordat Council met in emergency session. But this time things were different. 12 species formally withdrew from the Concordat, declaring it had failed its purpose. They formed a new alliance, calling it the Solidarity Pact. At its heart was a simple principle. Never again would they abandon those who needed help. 3 months later, a memorial was built on Earth. It was made from fragments of Elder Shivora's remains, crystalline shards that still glowed faintly with inner light. The inscription was simple. Here stood humanity when all others looked away. Here they proved that civilization is measured not by power or wealth, but by those you're willing to die beside. In memory of Elder Shivora and all who gave their lives so others might live, Captain Vasquez, now Admiral Vasquez, stood before the memorial with a young cadet. The kid couldn't have been more than 20, fresh-faced and eager. "Admiral," the cadet asked, "why did we do it? Why did humanity risk everything for aliens we barely knew? My instructors can't explain it." Vasquez looked at the glowing crystal, remembering Shivora's final words. "Because someone stood for us once when we needed it. Because sometimes the right thing and the smart thing aren't the same, and we'd rather be right." She smiled sadly. "Because that's what humanity does. We stand our ground, even when it's impossible, especially then." Vasquez placed her hand on the memorial. The crystal warmed under her touch. The galaxy learned something important in the Corvan Nebula. They learned that the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the strongest predator or the largest fleet. It's someone who refuses to abandon their friends. The cadet nodded slowly, understanding dawning. Around them, other humans came and went, paying respects to the fallen. But there were aliens too. Valith refugees glowing softly, Threnodi engineers, Quellan workers, members of species who had learned what humanity had known all along. That civilization doesn't mean never fighting. It means knowing what's worth fighting for. And sometimes it means standing your ground when everyone else says to run. The memorial glowed in the sunlight, a beacon of crystalline fire, a reminder of sacrifice, a promise of solidarity, a testament to the stubborn, foolish, wonderful humans who looked at impossible odds and said, "We don't care. We stand by our friends, and the galaxy would never forget."